You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. I hope you had a good August, despite various miseries visited on us by Trump, Kim Jong-un, climate change, and American Nazis. I had a bit of a hard time vacating at first, but I must say that on returning I find it sort of like people say about soap operas. You can drop off watching, and whenever you pick up again, somebody's long-lost evil twin brother is still in a coma. But we have a great season premiere for you today, with lots of catch-up news, an expanded Surrealism Corner, and, of course, fighting words. My guest is the political and social critic Ana Marie Cox for an in-depth, very interesting interview. Lots of good stuff. So let's get right to it. And first of all, we are going to go inside the headlines. Wow, there was a lot of biting the dust during August. Reince Priebus, remember him? Off went his long-suffering head, following Sean Spicer's, who left Sarah Huckabee Sanders to face the press with a perpetually constipated expression. Before Priebus left, he admitted to ABC's Jonathan Karl that the Trump administration has, quote, looked at a constitutional amendment to alter free speech protections so that the head of state can sue people who say things he doesn't like. Then Anthony the Mooch Scaramucci, straight out of Goodfellas, came and went in the White House so fast you missed him if you blinked. Marine General Kelly marched in to run things, and Steve Bannon did run. Back to Breitbart. Trump expanded his enemies list, and at last count was incensed at the growing number of his own administration's officials publicly disagreeing with him about Nazis and the Klan, North Korean strategy, whatever. That list now includes his secretaries of state and of defense, his chief of security, all 5 military joint chiefs of staff, the judiciary system, Congress, the Senate, of course the press, and the public, those plummeting opinion polls. Our hopes for sanity in the White House seem dependent on a military junta, the troika of generals, McMasters, Mattis, and Kelly, which is truly alarming. Remember the warning, quote, overgrown military establishments are, under any form of government, inauspicious to liberty and are to be regarded as particularly hostile to liberty. Close quote. George Washington said that. General George Washington. After Trump's staggering post-Charlottesville comments equating peaceful anti-racist protesters with gun-toting, torch-bearing, Sieg Heil saluting neo-Nazis, the business executives on the President's American Manufacturing Council resigned one by one, till Trump dissolved the council as if their resignations had all been his idea. That followed all 16 members of the President's Committee on the Arts and Humanities having walked out. Trump then dissolved that committee too. Artists and humanitarians apparently so terrify Trump that he and Melania declined to celebrate the Kennedy honors for fear of being booed out of their box. 4 coalitions of rabbis representing thousands of people from different strains of American Judaism denounced Trump in a joint statement, although only one pastor, A.R. Bernard, quit the president's 25-member Evangelical Executive Advisory Board, while Jerry Falwell, Jr. praised Trump's bold statements about Charlottesville. The mother of Heather Heyer, who was killed while demonstrating there for civil rights, refused to meet with Trump. Even the Boy Scouts had to apologize for having invited him to address their jamboree. Then they proceeded to try poaching members of the Girl Scouts to fill their own declining numbers. Trump is right to feel cornered. Citizen activism has put serious pressure on lawmakers and cabinet members, and the judiciary is listening too. So there's been backward slippage in areas Trump had counted on, supposed sure things, big ones like destroying the ACA, Obamacare, and passing easy tax reform in the first few months, and smaller ones, like forcing the DOJ to drop its demand for 1.3 million IP addresses from a Resistance to Trump website, or the Secret Service deciding to ignore recent orders to erase White House visitor log data. But that good news doesn't mean the regime isn't doing real damage, like erasing DACA, which means, unless Congress acts, 800,000 dreamers, young people who've lived their entire lives as Americans since they were brought here as babies by parents fleeing poverty and persecution, kids now in school, grad students, young couples working hard and buying their first homes, they'll all be sent home to countries they have no memories of whatsoever, and this will also have a severely negative impact on the general economy. Like halting the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission's Equal Pay Data Collection Initiative, set to go into effect next March, thus relieving the nation's largest employers and federal contractors from having to provide information about employees' compensation sorted by sex, race, and ethnicity to government civil rights enforcement agencies. Even like Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin stopping the portrait of slave liberator Harriet Tubman from replacing that of slave owner and Indian murderer Andrew Jackson on the $20 bill. Meanwhile, as Houston struggles to recover from Harvey's devastation and the Gulf Coast states brace for a new Category 5 hurricane, another weather calamity, receiving less attention, has been unfolding on the other side of the globe. Monsoon flooding in India, Bangladesh, and Nepal has killed more than 1,000 people and displaced millions. 2016 was the warmest year on the Earth's surface in nearly 150 years of measuring, scientists noted, in an international report that also found the highest sea levels since 1993 and the highest carbon dioxide concentrations in about 800,000 years. It was the third year in a row to set a new global temperature record. Now will the deniers grasp that this is climate change? Also internationally, 123,000 desperate Rohingya Muslims are streaming into Bangladesh, fleeing genocidal-level massacres in Myanmar or Burma, and Aung San Suu Kyi seems unwilling or unable to stop the persecutions. Assaults against dissenting speech, political opposition, and especially the press, are escalating in Mexico, Egypt, Venezuela, Turkey, Kyrgyzstan, China, and Russia, of course, Thailand, and Cambodia. Oh, and Israel plans to join a number of Gulf nations in banning Al Jazeera. Well, now that we're so depressed we're in need of the vacation we supposedly just had, there is some good news. You know I tend to save it for last, to leave a relatively hopeful taste in the brain. So here goes. India's highest court struck down a legal provision allowing Muslim men to instantly divorce their wives. This is a victory for Indian Muslim women after years of lobbying. Jordan's lower house of parliament voted to abolish Article 308 of the Jordanian Penal Code, which had allowed sexual assault perpetrators to escape punishment if they married their victims. That's a victory for Jordanian feminist activists. Here at home, an alliance of states upholding the Paris Climate Agreement now represents a third of the U.S. population, and it's growing. California, Washington State, and I'm proud to say New York, led the way. While the highest glass ceiling is still intact, a new report shows that women of color broke some barriers in last year's election. Titled Black Women in American Politics 2017 Status Update, the report was created by Higher Heights Leadership Fund and the Center for American Women in Politics at Rutgers University, and the full report is available online from the center. Author Kelly Dittmar argued the main narrative of political loss for women following the election glosses over wins by women of color, black women in particular. All the net gain for women in state legislatures from 2016 to 2017 was thanks to newly elected women of color. Women represented 24.9% of state legislators in 2017, up from 24.5% the year before, and black women accounted for 3 out of the 14 seats won by non-incumbent women in Congress in 2016. And to raise our spirits further, lesbian women won 70.3% of their races. There are now 44 open lesbian lawmakers in state legislatures. That's still small, but it's an all-time high. So hang on to the good news. For the rest, well, we're all really just waiting for Special Counsel Robert Mueller, aren't we? We have to take a break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and I'll be right back with an expanded Surrealism Corner.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
And we're back. So let's go right into the Surrealism Corner. So much surrealism has piled up during our hiatus that it's hard to know where to begin. And I missed out entirely on Anthony Scaramucci, the Mooch, in his brief White House tenure, alas. Well, I'd better just plunge in anywhere. Florida has passed a new law, signed by Republican Governor Rick Scott and already now in effect, which permits any Florida resident to challenge what's being taught in science classes. Yes, any Floridian can file a complaint, whether or not their family has a student in the school system. And then school boards, through a hired hearing officer, will handle the complaints, including movies, textbooks, and novels dealing with the subject of science. If the hearing officer thinks the challenge is justified, the schools can be required to remove the material in question. Well, there goes the great scientifically accurate young adult novels by Madeleine L'Engle. There goes any documentary about Marie Curie or Albert Einstein. There goes a movie like Close Encounters of the Third Kind because it implies humans are not the center of the universe. Hell, there goes evolution, climate change, and a planet Earth that isn't flat. So, I have a question. Does this mean that a progressive Florida resident can make a complaint about the teaching of, say, creationism in local schools? Or movies based on the Old Testament? Any Floridians out there listening? Just saying. Speaking of science, U.S. Department of Agriculture staff have been ordered to avoid using certain scientific terms in their work and required to use euphemisms instead. For example, and I'm quoting directly from the directive itself, avoid using climate change and instead use weather extremes. Avoid the term climate change adaptation and use instead resilience to weather. Avoid using the term intense weather events. Use drought, heavy rain, spring ponding. Avoid saying or writing reduce greenhouse gases and instead refer to increasing nutrient use efficiency. And avoid using the phrase the need to sequester carbon. Instead refer to building soil organic matter. Honest to God. So the poor, wretched people in Houston, Texas, just had an intense weather event, a weather extreme with heavy rain, that's all. And if they lost homes, livelihoods, even lives, well, they simply have to develop resilience to weather. While we're on extremes, I guess that's what it takes for the giants Google and Twitter to finally shut down the Daily Stormer, the noxious American Nazi website. They shut it down only after it had mocked Heather Heyer, the idealistic young woman who was killed, run over in Charlottesville deliberately by a neo-Nazi. But these major platforms had apparently been quite comfortable carrying the Daily Stormer since 2013. For shame. And shame brings us to Amsterdam, once known for its great museums and canals, these days infamous for its many neighborhoods that are red light districts. There, prostituted women are displayed behind large windows like inanimate mannequins in a dress shop. Prostitution's been legal in the Netherlands since 2000, with an expectable accompanying rise in human trafficking and other sex industry attendant crime. Now, the mayor's office has begun to focus on weeding out the red light district's growing violent criminal elements. This year, with the mayor's help, a group of prostituted people, mostly men, interestingly enough, has embarked on a new effort, setting up their own brothel called My Red Light, which they claim is an experiment in self-empowerment. My Red Light aims to become the Netherlands' first official cooperative of its kind, I bet, where co-op owners will have a say about their schedule and the design of the rooms, and even train for managerial positions. In other words, learn how to pimp other people to perform services they no longer will then have to perform themselves. The idea dates back to 2007, when the city first tried to combat crime in these neighborhoods by shutting down about 125 windows where women were being displayed for sale. The sex industry mobilized then, staging protests that claimed that so-called sex workers were being robbed of their livelihood and driven away so that the city could gentrify the historic area, which does claim some of Amsterdam's most valuable real estate. Well, about the gentrification and real estate aspects, they were actually correct, because subsequent meetings between the city and the sex industry eventually came up with the My Red Light idea. The city helped a social investment fund buy 4 buildings that it now rents to My Red Light. Amsterdam itself is now officially the pimp. Personally, I'm all for workers controlling their work environment, but anyone who propagates the lie that prostitution is work like any other is either paid by the sex industry bosses or has been driven around the bend by performing such a so-called job. The PTSD and suicide rates of women in the sex industry are higher than those for soldiers in frontline combat. The life expectancy rates hover frighteningly low in the 40s, and the battery numbers there are just off the charts. The growing worldwide network of survivors who tell the truth about prostitution is gaining ground, as is the Nordic model of legislation, which penalizes Johns as well as brothel owners and pimps, but not the women, and which is being adopted by more countries all the time. Not surprisingly, in those countries, trafficking is dried up, and crime is down. And now for something completely different, but equally surreal. It turns out that Pope Francis went to a psychoanalyst for help when he was 42 years old and already a provincial superior of the Jesuits in Argentina. Now, we knew that Francis had worked as a nightclub bouncer before beginning seminary studies, but this is a fresh tidbit of info. And not only was his shrink Jewish, but a woman. According to Francis, she was very wise and extremely good in helping him to clarify things. Unfortunately, she didn't leave enough of an impression so that Francis, on becoming pope, would change the Church's attitude toward women's reproductive rights, no matter how progressive he may appear to be in other areas. Last, during August, the New York Times reported that scientists had successfully edited the DNA of human embryos to erase a heritable heart condition known for causing sudden death in young athletes. This is the first time gene editing on human embryos has been performed in the United States. Mind you, the work is still embryonic itself, in that the embryos were only allowed to grow for a few days, and there was never any intention of implanting them to create a pregnancy. But the scientists acknowledged that they intend to move forward with the experiment, with the ultimate goal being able to, quote, correct disease-causing genes in embryos that will develop into fetuses. One of the team's next targets may be the BRCA gene mutation, which is associated with breast cancer. This most recent and controversial work, however, which became public with a paper in the journal Nature, is especially sensitive because it involves changes to the germ line, that is, genes that could be passed on to future generations. Now, Alta Charo, a bioethicist at the University of Wisconsin at Madison, who is co-chair of the National Academy's committee that looks at gene editing, said that concerns about the work are overblown. Quote, "What this represents is a fascinating, important, and impressive incremental step toward learning how to edit embryos safely and precisely," she said, adding, "No matter what anybody says, this is not the dawn of the era of the designer baby." Close quote. Well, that's reassuring, I guess. But reassuring or not, it is decidedly surreal. It's time for another quick break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and I'll be back in just a moment with an in-depth interview with the political pundit and feminist pundit, Ana Marie Cox. Don't go away.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back. My guest this week is Ana Marie Cox, who is a political columnist. Surely you know her, and she's a culture critic as well. Since she started the snarky, wonderful political blog Wonkette in 2004, she worked at a number of outlets, including Time Magazine, Gentleman's Quarterly, Air America, and The Guardian. She was an editor at Mother Jones, and she's authored a romantic comedy novel, Dog Days. She's a star on Twitter with a huge following, and today she conducts the talk interviews featured in the New York Times Magazine and hosts With Friends Like These, which is a podcast lively from Crooked Media. She was the senior political correspondent for MTV News, and she appears frequently as a political commentator on MSNBC. Here is an in-depth conversation, personal and political, as if they were different, with Ana Marie Cox. Welcome to Women's Media Center Live, Ana. Good to have you here.
It's good to be here.
Well, you are this smart, funny, vulnerable, really quite lovely, and consistently intelligent voice in media, and a feminist voice. And I want to thank you for that, because whether it's on MSNBC or your own podcast on Crooked Media or in the New York Times Magazine, all the various venues, there is a consistent voice that says in more than one witty way, hello, remember the women. And that's not common enough these days, so thank you.
Well, thank you. I honestly don't know any other way to be. I'm sure you're the same way.
I am, but one always feels like one is alone and a crazy lady, even with a burgeoning women's movement around one. And these days, when the unspeakable becomes commonplace, it sometimes is hard to remember that. How do you see this spasm, this horrible contraction that this country is going through ending? I mean, do you see 25th Amendment? Do you see impeachment? Do you see resignation? Do you see the thermonuclear war? Do you have any takes?
I have many takes. Lots of them hot. but I think that a lot of professional pundits, including myself, consider ourselves out of the prediction business after the election.
Yeah.
I guess at one point in my life, I would have found it very easy to dismiss things like the invocation of the 25th Amendment.
Yeah.
We are through the looking glass at this point.
Yeah.
And it is, I think, unwise to say that something is not possible. And that ranges from the 25th Amendment to nuclear war.
Yeah.
Like, both of those things are possible. It is a sobering time to be alive.
Yeah.
We have to do the best we can and keep one foot in front of the other. I think it is slightly more possible that he resigns than the Fifth Amendment.
Well, his MO seems to be, if you don't want to be my friend, I'll not be your friend first. I mean, it's such a mature position as his others are. You know, the panel can't walk out on me, the commission can't walk out on me, I'll dissolve you first. So that very well may be the case. You may be right.
And I also think that he knows intuitively how to campaign, because we've turned campaigning to something that he can do. We've kind of lowered the level of our discourse in campaigning to something that Trump can conquer. But governing is still very difficult, and he's obviously finding that out. And I think Republican Washington and establishment Washington is finding out that they may not need him, and that he may be more of a burden than an asset, and also that they're not scared of him the way that they were 6 months ago.
Yes.
You see that with Gary Cohn coming out and criticizing him, with Rex Tillerson coming out and criticizing him. Those things would have been unthinkable, I think, even 3 months ago.
Yeah.
But he's turned in, I will use a word that for Trump probably carries a lot of weight, which is impotent in his power, except for sending tweets.
Yes.
I will say that I continue to be terrified by Jeff Sessions, no matter what Trump.
Oh, yes.
Trump himself is not accomplishing very much.
So many terrifying people, so little time, in power. One of the things I worry about, though, is I think you're quite right, and I think people have stopped believing in him, not believing, or even believing him as just, oh, there he goes again. The problem with that is that he may decide at one point to do something that ends sentient life on the planet, and no one will have believed that he's really ready to do it. One of the things that I hang on to, cling to like a raft in Houston, God help him, is that the grassroots activism for an ancient organizer like me is so heartening. It's so incredible. My fear was that after the Women's March, it would people would go home and there would be business as usual. And because sustaining that kind of energy is where the hard part comes in. And in fact, they have sustained it. We have sustained it. The groups that have sprung up all over the country, largely, I might add, led by women, with men acting principled ways this time, are just gladden my heart. Do you feel the same thing?
I do. This is one of the pleasant surprises that we couldn't have predicted, for those of us that are out of the prediction business these days. I think that the opportunity that Trump gave us in his madness and his thirst for ratings and for attention is that he also has kept the activists energized, right? Yep. Well, he was governing in any sense of normalcy. If he was a Pence, he wouldn't be as energized. Right. But he keeps doing these outrageous things, and I guess we were all worried about outrage fatigue. But give Trump this: he's an incredible programmer, right? Yes, he knows how to keep ratings high. He feeds it, right? And he's keeping ratings high also to his detriment. And I turn ratings, and I obviously don't mean approval ratings. Right. I mean people watching. Right. And he keeps doing these things that get attention, and they get attention in the very worst ways. And attention, in addition to the loathsome alt-right folks that he's energizing. Yeah. He's energizing many more progressive people, and also people who have good heart. Yes. Not just progressive. That's right. People who are decent people. Who don't identify as progressive, but people who just know that what's happening is wrong. And have a sense of human decency, and have had it. And they would not necessarily be moved to action without drastic measures, which is unfortunate about our species, but it is true, I'm afraid. I wanted to ask you a couple of personal questions, with real respect. When you were younger, when you were a sort of baby journalist, you had appeared on the Don Imus radio show, and later on you said with tremendous honesty, "I'm embarrassed to admit that it took Imus saying something so devastatingly crass to make me realize there was no reason beyond ego to play along. I did the show almost solely to earn my media elite merit badge." So I'm curious, there was a time when you wrote for Gentleman's Quarterly, there was a time when you wrote for Playboy, as well, of course, as
mainstream media outlets that were not sexist or racist. But the progress from that is a complex journey, and to emerge with such a strong and beautiful feminist voice is a journey I think it's important for us to understand. Can you help?
I think I can. I would say a couple of things.
Mm-hmm.
One is that I have what is also considered kind of an alcoholic's resume. I am a recovering alcoholic and addict, and I cycled through a lot of different jobs.
Uh-huh.
And not because I was getting necessarily, it's not sort of what you might assume, which is just getting fired for
No.
a job or whatever. That wasn't it. It was more just the kind of people that I am to cycle through things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And look for something better all the time.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah. And I would say that, that has its drawbacks, obviously, and I'm a more comfortable person these days.
Mm-hmm.
But what that did allow me to do, and this is where I would say I thank my father and my mother and the way that I was brought up in a really proudly progressive household, is I was always told that the real measure of job satisfaction is do you feel proud of your work?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I got an opportunity sort of through my own, bumbling way to experience a lot of different types of media.
Uh-huh.
And it has given me a much sharper vision for what makes me happy and what makes me feel fulfilled. I wouldn't wish my journey on other people.
Yeah.
But there's something to be said for, making the mistakes that you need to make.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, absolutely. You're going to make them anyway, so you might as well have something to say about them.
That's right.
And own them.
Right, exactly. And to not feel like you need to stick with something just because everyone says it's a good idea.
Right.
And I've found it in my journey that the things that I really love, the jobs that I've really loved, the colleagues that I've really benefited from being around, have always been things that have fit into my worldview, not just as a journalist, not just as someone who wants to earn a paycheck, for writing, but who also believe what I believe.
Right. And with good humor. I mean, there's a difference in that. I mean, I think it's one reason people love Rachel Maddow. I mean, there's a nastiness about a lot of journalism that, and I'm speaking of our side even now, that is unnecessary. To retain a sense of good humor. I don't mean Pollyanna, obviously. This could be easily misunderstood, and regular listeners to this program know I'm certainly not Pollyanna, or if I am, I'm the bleakest one to come out of Aunt Emma's household. Just a sense of wryness. It's another way one could put it. And it takes guts to retain that, and I applaud that in you. I mean, also, you've been very open and vulnerable about your other struggles. I mean, when you came out as a Christian in, what was it, 2015? Earlier.
Nope, 2015, I think it's about.
2015.
Maybe 2014. I think 2015.
Right,
yeah.
and you came out when Carrie Fisher died. You came out in solidarity with her as bipolar. To do all this in a public realm takes an enormous amount of guts. And the first thing that occurred to me was, if Ana Marie Cox and Annie Lamott have declared that they're Christians, this is regaining Christianity's good name from the crazed evangelicals. Not all evangelicals are crazed, but which ones I mean. And so I congratulate you on that, because it comes from you with a tone that is willing to be vulnerable, that knows it may be attacked, but that is still pluralistic. You're not saying everybody has to follow this course. You're not, I mean, in other words, there's a place for me, an atheist who believes in grace, in your universe as there is for you and mine. And that's something I think that the species really could use more of.
Yeah. And I believe that's actually my vision of God is an expansive one.
Mm-hmm.
My vision of my higher power, my vision of the way the universe works is expansive. And it includes people of good faith, meaning not just faith in God, right? With people like you.
Well, thank you. We try.
I believe in a universe that expands to contain all the goodness available, right? And I don't need people to believe what I believe to believe in them. I just think that now especially it's very important to recognize that whatever motivates one to work for a better world, that's good enough for me, right? We can agree on our goals. We don't need to agree on our exact motivations.
Right.
And I've also come to believe that for me, what evangelism is about, I do love what is perhaps the apocryphal St. Francis quote about, preach the gospel always, sometimes use words.
Yes. Well, he said some damn good things.
And I think that what my vision for my form of evangelism is, which is to carry the good word, which is to carry the message that we all have within us, the possibility of grace, and that is communicated through what we do. And I carry that, that I feel especially important to me now, as we look towards the Trump presidency and perhaps it ending before 4 years. We have this incredible opportunity because of the pretty strong temporary alliance that's been formed between progressives and never Trump conservatives.
Yes.
Is perhaps a kind of, once in a great many years kind of chance to maybe overcome some of the barriers that have existed before. I don't think we're going to agree on everything.
Oh, no.
I don't, but maybe we can...
We don't have to.
No, we don't have to, but maybe we can start to reconsider what used to be the boundaries that we didn't even go there.
Right. Right.
I had a really wonderful conversation on my show a couple weeks ago with Tom Nichols, who's a never Trump conservative national security guy, professor at the Naval College. He's really interesting on what Trump's temperament means for national security, which is, as you might guess, not good. But we wound up having a conversation around Charlottesville because he got super defensive about the way that we're connecting the modern GOP to the alt-right. And he kept on saying, that's not fair, that's not fair, that's not fair. And I was like, yeah, it's really tough when somebody judges you for by assumptions for a large group, right? Doesn't that suck? And he copped to the fact, actually, that for a straight white man, to say something's not fair
is a little ironic.
And we started to get somewhere about, maybe you need to hear this.
Right. Right.
Maybe you need to hear this critique of, yes, the modern GOP, not just, the Southern strategy. Maybe you need to hear that some people see a connection between voter suppression and voter ID and gerrymandering.
You think?
And, yes, what happened in Charlottesville. It's not a direct connection. I don't hold you personally responsible.
Right.
But if you are upset by Charlottesville, we need to talk about why these people feel welcome in your party.
Right. I keep waiting for, it's beginning to happen that some Republicans are turning publicly, but I keep waiting for somebody to take responsibility for that, to own up for that, to say, my God, we've been evoking this for years, and now that we have it, we sort of run around saying, oh my God, how shocking, this isn't us. But we have been, conjuring it. And certainly the whole country has, certainly Democrats have, certainly, I'm not exculpating anybody, but I keep waiting for that voice of responsibility, and I may just turn up my toes and croak before it comes, but I
think that there's that you're hearing it in this very cautious way from some people like Charlie Sykes.
Yes.
Who's the closest they'll come right now is saying that we did welcome these people into the party, we didn't push them out.
Right.
I think that a lot of conservatives are having a little bit of trouble with that next step that I think is important, which is drawing that connection between things like voter suppression and bathroom bills and the alt-right.
Mm-hmm.
But they're at least recognizing that they didn't kick these people out when they should have.
Right. Well, that's a start.
It is,
and it has to start somewhere.
And I do think there's probably going to be some need for liberals and progressives to do some reckoning of ourselves. I won't be so wise as to say what it is. Surely there are probably things that we need to listen to our conservative brothers and sisters about. I won't pretend that I know exactly what it is, because I don't think it's I need to denounce the so-called alt-left. I'm not going there. That's, I think.
What in God's name?
That doesn't actually exist.
Yeah, I was just going to say another thing that doesn't actually exist. I have a section on this program called the Surrealism Corner, but it is growing every episode, so soon we will rename the program Surrealism. It's just, it's staggering.
And I also think it's hilarious that we're being asked to denounce the anti-fascists, and I'm like, no.
Yeah, right, exactly.
They're anti-fascist.
Whoa, just a minute here. Could we stop and think about the words we've just used?
Exactly.
Yes,
I'll denounce violence.
I'm against That's right. I'm against anti-fascism. I mean, what? It's a double negative. No, it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. One quick last question. Because you've been so involved with online journalism as well as with legacy journalism, I might add. You're a woman for all seasons. And because you even lectured, I think, on social media and social activism and the interchanges there, I'm curious as to what you think of the sometimes, unfortunately, often toxic attacks against any woman who speaks her mind online. And I mean, of course, what happened to the gamers, the whole, and it continues to this day. I'm sure you, like I, get death threats, and you've been particularly open and vulnerable. What do you have a prescription for this? What way do you see out of this?
I have a personal prescription and a more global idea. The personal prescription is cute animal pictures.
Is what?
Those cute animal pictures. A personal coping mechanism, and I every Friday I have an adorable happy hour on my Twitter, where we invite people to submit their hashtag adorables as opposed to deplorables. All
those cats drinking from faucets. Those wonderful.
That's right.
Yeah, they're good.
Doggies, or ferrets, or sometimes occasionally children, but I really do prefer furred pictures. And I'm not entirely kidding. I do think that there is a lot of joy to be had in finding a community of positivity online that can counter whatever negativity you find.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think that the other thing that needs to happen is, this will be very familiar to you, but the more representation that women have in technology,
of course,
the better the tools for combating that kind of ugliness will be.
Of course.
I'm not a tech expert, so I can't even tell you what I think the technical solutions are. But I know that if you have women creating Twitter, it would probably look different than it looks now.
You betcha. Well, that's one of the priorities of this program is women in STEM. The subject, going back to it again and again and again, because we lost ground when industrialization came in, and it took us 100 years to catch up. But this time, if we're not in on that tech universe, we're not in on the future. So it's absolutely imperative that young white testosterone riddled males do not continue to control it and consider it their personal pissing game and backyard. But people like you make the difference. So thank you for what you do on air and off, and for your own courage as an individual, and for your feminism, and for your wit and your good humor. So keep on keeping on, and we'll keep watching you.
I really appreciate it. I am blushing.
Well, I'm sure it's very fetching, Anna. Take care. We'll be watching. Thanks again.
Bye-bye.
One last pause here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and I will be back directly with, yes, those fighting words.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
We are back with some fighting words. And how do you like that terrific new intro music for this segment, huh? It's a mixed bag of fighting words today, so many words left over from the summer to fight about. For instance, the columnists and pundits who explain Trump's behavior as being like that of a child, or his having a New York style, or his being 71 years old. No, 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 no. Having been and having birthed an intelligent child, and knowing quite a few other fine small people, I feel strongly that to compare Trump to a child demeans children, because one of the best things about kids is their unquenchable curiosity. And I can also testify, being a New Yorker, that my beloved city is the essence of urbanity. It's so diverse that you hear an average of 4 different languages or dialects and see 6 different patinas of complexion while walking along a single street. New York's alive with both wit and grit. It's the de facto capital of the planet in hosting the United Nations. An inclusive megalopolis composed of friendly small neighborhoods, and it prides itself on humor and a generosity of spirit, none of which is reflected in Trump. Furthermore, being in his 70s does not explain this man whose soul had atrophied by the time he was 20. Need I name an honor roll of great, brilliant, talented, wise, hard-working elders to prove my point? Where would I begin? Good God, Congressman John Lewis, Dolores Huerta, Ursula K. Le Guin, my own Women's Media Center co-founder sisters. Jane Fonda turns an activist 80 this December, and Gloria Steinem's already beat her by 4 years. I'm 76. Feel like I'm 42, but much more intelligent, going strong and neither missing nor stopping for a beat. Age does not justify Trump and his behavior any more than a dress does. Get it through your heads, people. The man playing a president on TV is a sociopath. Nuts, bat, turd, crazy, cuckoo, ding-dong. So please stop with the comparisons to kids, old folks, and New Yorkers. These days I'm also on a rampage against the glut of trendy phrases used by lazy people to clog our brain arteries, like kick the can down the road, reach out to, unpack this, and double down. I would be ecstatic if I never again had to hear Trumpian word abuse that's now infecting normal people's speech. Phrases like, you look at such and so, and I can tell you that. Not to speak, literally, please, not to speak of hyperbolic exclamations. Incredible, unbelievable, the biggest, the best, the most successful, blah, blah, blah. I find myself longing for understatement. Words like decent, pleasant, suitable. So refreshing. But onward to actions, which have a lot to do with words. These days, when the dreamers are the latest political football being cynically tossed around, context helps. Did you know, for example, that the first naturalization laws of the United States Congress limited citizenship to 4 words? A free white person. The additional silent adjective was the word male, since citizenship bestows the right to vote, speak in public, and own property, rights then not available to women. And let's glance at the word pardon in the wake of Trump's pardoning former Arizona Sheriff Joe Arpaio for being in contempt of court after he refused to stop persecuting Latino Americans to such extremes that he finally was roundly voted out of office. This lawman spat on the law. It would appear that Trump was warming up his pardon powers very early in preparation for protecting those who might otherwise testify against his part in the conspiracy with Russians to corrupt our elections. Not that this would be a new idea. Do you know that the presidential pardon was a matter of considerable contention among the framers of the Constitution? George Mason of Virginia, often referred to as the father of the Bill of Rights, refused to sign the document. In his essay, Objections to this Constitution of Government, reasons he cited were the lack of a Bill of Rights, and he also wanted an immediate end to the slave trade. But additionally, he wrote, quote, "The President of the United States has the unrestrained power of granting pardons for treason, which may be sometimes exercised to screen from punishment those whom he had secretly instigated to commit the crime, and thereby prevent a discovery of his own guilt." Close quote. That was in 1787. Pretty prophetic, George. In closing, I offer a delicious story about the use of words and wit to frustrate violence and turn it impotent. I dedicate the story, reported in the Washington Post, to the Klansmen and wannabe Nazis who wielded their tiki torches in Charlottesville and Boston and other cities, and who believe that under the Trump banner, American fascism is now going mainstream. In Germany, neo-Nazis have increasingly abused World War II commemorations to organize massive gatherings that end in open street fights with both authorities and left-wing activists. But now there's a new strategy that's changing that. Wunsiedel, a German town near the Czech border, has struggled for years with a parade of unwanted visitors since it was the original burial site of one of Hitler's deputies, Rudolf Hess. Every year, to residents' revulsion, hundreds of neo-Nazis marched to his grave. The town staged counter-demonstrations to dissuade them. It even exhumed Hess's body and removed his grave marker. That was in 2011. But the neo-Nazis returned to their hallowed fascist ground. So in 2014, the town tried a different tactic, humorous subversion. A new campaign called Rechts gegen Rechts, the right against the right, turned the march into an involuntary walkathon. For every meter the neo-Nazis marched, local residents and businesses pledged to donate 10 euros, which then was equivalent to about $12.50, to a program called Exit Deutschland, founded by criminologist and former police detective Bernd Wagner and former neo-Nazi leader Ingo Hasselbach. Exit Germany, or Exit Deutschland, has been working since 2000 to provide assistance to dropouts from extreme, violent, right-wing environments. Over 500 individual cases have been successfully completed, with a recidivism rate of only 3%. A sign at the end of the march route in Wunsiedel thanked the marchers for their contribution to the anti-Nazi cause, which was close to $12,000 at the end, and the town showered the marchers with rainbow confetti at the finish line. Apparently, the marchers were totally flummoxed. Some of the neo-Nazis dropped out of the march and went home in disgust, muttering to themselves. Some straggled on, very confused to be encouraged by cheering crowds to raise more money by marching more, and some even stopped to talk to the Exit Deutschland representatives. The approach has spread to several other German towns and to one in Sweden where it was billed Nazis Against Nazis. I pass it along in the hope that it might be adopted in American cities where the extreme right is on the march. In the end, violence requires a violent response to thrive, but there's nothing violence can do when confronted with intelligence, in a judo-like use of words and action that turns malevolence against itself. So yeah, watch what people do, but also watch what people say. Those are my fighting words. Add yours on Twitter, and be sure to tag us at WMC Live and use the hashtag #FightingWords. And that's it for today. This program is syndicated, but if you can't find the broadcast on a radio station in your area, you can always visit us at WMClive.com for the show, plus the archive of all our previous episodes, and at iTunes Worldwide, where you can stream, download, and subscribe to our show's podcast. Also, be sure to find WMC Live on Facebook and Twitter. And you can check out my own website and blog at robinmorgan.net and find me on Facebook and Twitter, too. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Opinions expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. WMC President and Executive Producer of this program, Julie Burton, and our founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us, and don't forget to join us next week right here on Women's Media Center Live.
For the smartest talk about news, politics, sex, books, religion, race, and more, tune your radio to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Audacious, witty, provocative, informative, and fun. It's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on WMCLive.com. Talk radio with a brain.